So, thank you all for joining. Obviously, we at the LHA, we set up this sort of virtual learning experience, virtual demos every single day. You'll have saw a couple of colleagues of mine last week doing some fantastic videos on colouring. So Stacey Dickinson and Kaylee Jane, really, really nice work and really great insight into colour. This week, seemingly, or the first 2 days of the week is seemingly more about cutting. So Darren Bain yesterday with the bobs and graduated bob, fantastic. Myself today, I'm going to be working you guys through layering, as I mentioned at the start of the video. And what is layering? What does layering do for us? Why would we use layering in salon or academy or on stage work, wherever you guys end up with your careers? The spectrum is endless for you guys. What can it do? What does it do? What don't we want to use it with? And what can we utilize for this word here, which is one of my, I don't know if you can see this, but hopefully you can see my, my magic paper. Suitability. And what is suitability? Why is suitability important? And what is it? And what we're going to be doing over the next hour and a half or so is trying to explain how you can utilize techniques that you learn with us and techniques that you learn further in your career and tweak those techniques to basically work for every single client or every single guest that you have in your salon. So yes, this is going to be quite a very classic session. I'm going to run you through like a round layer or a uniform layer, but I'm going to tweak it slightly because we're going to imagine my mannequin has got slightly different textured and density hair to what she actually has. Because if you have somebody's hair who is thick all the way around, you would use a different technique to somebody who has maybe hair that's thicker in the back and then slightly finer in the front, or somebody who has fine hair the whole way around their head. So how do we create something slightly different for each one of our guests in salon? And how do we tweak our work to make sure that we're still learning, we're still developing, but every single day we're doing something different. And you're making everything suitable for every single client that you have. So before we begin, I want to start very quickly with a little bit of an understanding of the theory that is behind layering hair. So I'm going to put my scissors down actually before I drop them. And for me, two things in cutting hair are primarily your fundamentals. So they run down to be your elevation and your over direction. Now, we're not going to focus too heavily on over direction today. I'm going to do that in another session next week. But over direction is primarily where you want to get from short to long, for instance. So short in the back and long in the front, as an example. And you want the hair to blend and flow and gradually get longer from the back towards the front. How do we do that? So we pull the hair away from its natural fall to increase or add some length into a certain position. Don't worry too much on that today. Those of you guys who are aware of over direction, we will obviously continue working with over direction. But for those guys who are new to the course or new to the LHA, we're going to focus on it later. But elevation, what is elevation? Elevation is primarily lifting hair. So as Darren mentioned so well yesterday, when he was working his bob shape and why he cut the hair directly flat onto the guest's neck or in his comb, for instance, he was trying to get as low elevation as he could possibly get, primarily to not create any form of outline graduation on the hair. Now, when we start to think of elevation, I use this chart here personally, pretty much all the time when I'm in academy working with my groups. Hopefully you can see it. There's a bit of a glare coming through the window, so I'll try and stand in the way. So we've got zero, there's a little heading here, 0 degrees of elevation is where we cut our line work or our one lengths. Anything between 0 degrees and 89 degrees of elevation will create your graduation. And I'm going to explain what graduation and layering will look like on somebody's head in a moment. Anything from 90 degrees and up will be your layering. So when somebody comes in the salon, you've got to figure out what sort of elevation or what sort of graduation or layering is going to influence the haircut best. And the way to work that is to see how much weight is in their hair. Ask her in her consultation what she likes and what she doesn't like about her hair. If she mentions that she doesn't like the weight, it's too heavy, you know you have to lift that section of hair higher, okay? So for an example, I can see there's a lady called Amanda on here, Amanda Gromanovic, who I work with very heavily over in Loughton. I'm going to use her as an example just here. So say, for instance, myself and Amanda are both in salon, and I've cut somebody's hair. They've come in next week and seen Amanda because they don't want to come back to me because I may have not done the hair what they were looking to have done. And said to Amanda that Rob did my hair last week, it's a little bit too heavy. Amanda instantly needs to find where I've elevated my hair to, or where I've elevated the layering to. And then all she would need to do is lift it slightly higher to create less weight in the overall bulk of the hair. Your bulk generally tends to form on long hair from about the occipital bone down, because you get a nice little flush piece of hair running down, and then your weight seems to attract down in the base. And that's what we're combating with layering. So when we're elevating the hair to remove weight, we're tucking the hair in around, shouldn't have moved her, we're tucking the hair back in closer to the guest body rather than it being so wide and so thick. So all of you guys would have seen when you're working with guests in salon or academy, or even your family's hair, that sometimes their hair is so wide. Layering is just going to slim that back in, okay, and ensure that we get a much sculpt silhouette. So what does it look like then? So we've got to understand that there's a couple of videos going around of within the company of your terminologies and what actual cutting hair terminologies are. So your outlines are basically your outline. So the outline of your hair around your hairline. So this first little piece of hair all the way around. Now, what we're going to be looking for with any form of outline work is showing what our hair actually does, and remembering the hair that's left on the head. And that will make more sense in a moment. So if I've got my line or my one length, and my outline is going to be the shortest point. Okay, hopefully you guys can see that. I'm not sure you can. If I pull this forward a little bit, you might be able to see it a little bit clearer. So my outline is the shortest point. And as we move up the hair gets longer and longer and longer to reach down to our one line or our one length. Okay, so what you're going to find is when the hair all dresses down and all sits onto that same point, is ultimately the hair is going to bulk up on top of each other. Yeah, the hair is going to start to sit on top of one another, and the expansion is going to be quite large. Okay. Sorry, I just saw something in the chat. That wasn't the question. So when we come to think of graduation or layering, this is what we're trying to combat. We need to combat the stack on top of the hair and start to push that shape back into the look. Okay. So with a line work, I may be going a bit overboard here, but that is your heaviest form of graduation, because your outline is the shortest point and everything internally gets longer. So everything up the head gets longer to hit that one main line, okay? When we talk about graduation, as soon as we lift off 0 degrees, we are technically taking weight out of the hair. So when we're graduating, we will still have our outline the shortest point, but as we move up the head and we start to stack the hair on top, your graduation will give you that slight elevated feel. So the hair is still getting longer and longer as we're coming up the head. If I stand this side, it might block out that light a little bit. So if you can see that, we've still got a shorter, we're coming shorter, so we're just almost taking off that slight corner that's formed into the base, but still giving us that shorter point in the base and that stacked up graduation feel. Okay, but when we come to layering, we come above 90 degrees. So whenever we've worked on layering in salon, you would have your fingers from 90 degrees elevation and above, and your outline will drop away. And I'll explain that when we do our demo in a little bit. But your line on your outline will be the longest point, and everything internally becomes shorter. So in a sense, stopping that big bulk of weight and the big expansion of weight behind the hair, okay? So when we talk about layering, we are essentially removing weight from hair. So as I said earlier, when I was speaking about a learner with me, Amanda, if we were in salon, we would have a situation where she would say, right, I just need to find out how much weight Rob's left in the hair, and how do I combat that? Just by lifting slightly higher, okay? So what is a round layer? What is a square layer? What is the difference? So when we're working with our square layering or our long graduation in Academy, we were working with something where everything just popped up onto the ceiling, okay? So if you imagine every piece of hair had a magnet and the roof has a magnet and it's all just connected and everything's sitting up straight. That would be a very nice technique for you to use if somebody didn't want much layering in the hair. They just wanted that little bit of weight removal, because you're only going to be taking off the very, very tips of the hair, okay? With your uniform layer, it's a much heavier layering technique, and it's not one that I personally use overly. I will explain why in a little bit of time, and I'll explain how I tweak my uniform layer to basically make sure that it works every single time. And it's something to do with the hairline and something to do with the way the hair actually sits, okay? But we'll get onto that in a little bit. So suitability will be a big factor for us today. And suitability is crucial for making a haircut suit a person, or suit their bone structure, suit their face shape, suit their lifestyle, for instance. So whenever you're going through your consultation sheets, you will be looking for their lifestyle. You'll be looking at everything that works for that guest. And that's also very, very important. All of these things here, we're going to be going over in a couple of weeks' time. We're going to be doing a lot of these videos. So I'm going to basically give you a bone structure demo and something where you can put bangs areas and fringes all around the front of their face to actually make areas pop in a person's face. Okay? But let's get on with the haircut. So I will be doing some head sheets as we go. Hopefully you guys will be following along with your head sheets. And yeah, let's do it. So I've already put, in the interest of time, I've already put my line in. I don't want to belittle you guys and run a line through. So my line below shoulders is in. I'm going to start work on my round layer now. So I have my profile section in the top, and then my back section is completely separated. And I've run a radial section from just behind the ears into just in front of my crown area, okay? And the reason I'm working this just in front of my crown, my crown will fall just around in here, is these areas, I call them your danger zones. So your danger zones will be any area of the head or the hairline or the head shape that is going to give you some problem or could possibly give you an issue with the look. So if you've got a front piece of a cowslip, for instance, or you've got a double crown, triple crown, or you've got a nape whirl, those areas are your danger zones from what I say. You need to be careful of those. So I run my guideline from just in front of my crown in my radial, and it allows me then to be quite free with my crown area. If there's a double crown or even a triple crown, I can just very gently point that area through, allowing myself to leave a lot more length than I would possibly need to leave. Just because if you go too short with a double crown, it's going to stick up and you've had it, okay? So we're going to start through our radial section. And primarily, I'm looking to, if you imagine there's magnets in the hair and there's a big circle going across here, and that's a magnet, and everything's just going to come out and hit that same point. So I use the analogy of, imagine my mannequin electrocuted herself and the hair stands out an end. What is the 3D shape that we're going to see? And hopefully we're going to see this round shape the whole way around the head, okay? So that's what we're going for. So let's see if we can do it. So I'm going to start with my right-hand side radial, and I'm going to only take a little bit of hair because I want this hair to come up at 90 degrees from the guest's head. So I want it to be very, very layered. So my comb goes flat on the skin, and we just want to run it down wherever the comb goes. okay? So really important is that we keep our tension clean the whole way through. So comb from the very bottom. What? Oh, sorry, I thought someone was coming on there. So comb from the very, very bottom, fingers in, and comb and fingers run together. And I'm going to take my first guide. Okay. And there's something called subdividing. So I'm going to take a piece from before and a piece from my next section, if that makes sense. I got a little bit lost there. And we're going to use the guide from the piece before. So again, comb really nice and cleanly and run your section out. If we need to double check where we're going, plop the comb 90 degrees onto the head and we can see that our elevation is perfect. So what you can see here is if we utilize our elevation chart that we just spoke about, we are going from a very light layer into something a little bit heavier down into the sides. We don't want the sides to be too light because we want to connect that layering all the way around through our overall line work. But as I said earlier, there's a slight tweak that I want to do, and this is where we're going to begin it from the very, very start. So you'll notice that my elevation is just higher than 90 degrees. If I were 90 degrees out from the head down on the side, I'd come into here, okay? So I'd be taking all of that chunk of weight or all of that chunk of hair out. Now, this is my overall outline. And this is why I tend to change the way I work my uniform layer ever so slightly. So for something in level 3, this is quite important to understand when you do go into level 3 work and start working with intense shape, that if I come and take this shape away, it's got my outline still in there, okay? So what I'm going to find is if I cut that directly at 90 and cut this piece of hair away here, what we're going to find is when I drop my guest's hair down, I'm going to have a lovely clean line, and then it's going to go quite transparent around the ears area. We're going to get a hole in there. Because I'm taking the absolute weight and absolute sustenance out of that overall outline. So in order to control that, as we've seen, I'm just going to leave my elevation just that little bit higher so that I don't come down and start to compromise my line. So I can let my line drop away. That keeps the stability and I keep a clean look the whole way around the head. Okay, I hope that makes sense. If it doesn't make any sense, please do come on and I can explain it a little bit more. But for me, that is the easiest way to control your hairline. And I will explain why it does that in a little bit. So again, we're going to come down. My body position stays in the back. My shoulders are nice and smooth. And I'm ensuring that I'm not leaning too far. Really important with cutting hair and coloring hair is that you make it really easy for yourself and make it feel quite comfortable. You all have long careers ahead of you. You don't want to be doing your back in when you're first training. And then you're going to find that you've got a real long slog of work to do before you can So the reason we are leaving our elevation is because of the hairline. And the hairline changes, as we all know, but I don't know if anyone's ever really looked at it too much and thought too heavily about the hairline. Back here, we have double the density of hair than we do here, yeah? So nobody has hair in here or on their ears, or well, some people do, but not all the time we have hair all the way around into the front of our faces, okay? So we come from the back where you've got such a density of hair and it comes up around the ear and we lose half of it, yeah? So we need to work with the hair and work with the hairline to basically push hair back into this side piece. Otherwise, we're going to find we lose a lot of control around this area. So how do we work that? How do we clean that area up? Is with our over directions and our pulling hair away from the technique, which is what we're going to go through in a couple of weeks' time, probably next week, to be fair. But we'll focus on it a little bit today, okay? So I'm going to comb all of my radial section back. That is now my guideline, okay? And spray the hair down again, just to ensure that we get a really nice even wetness the whole way through. And I'm going to start on my head sheets. So those of you following along with head sheets at home, I use black for my sections, red for my over direction, blue for my expanded shape, and I use green for my expected fall and elevation. Okay, so we're going to start over our radial, and literally this area pulls up, and we take our nice rectangular line. We can also show our our elevation through the sides. So across the radial, we want that to come down and round. And if we remember, we had that little bit higher section onto the top. So if we were doing a true uniform layer, we would have come down and had a horizontal line across and connected. Okay, and we're going to do the similar line around here. Mind I don't draw on the wall. And again, into that shape. Okay, so what that's basically showing us, if we look at this section of hair, or if at this haircut and think, how did we do that? We can look back at our head sheets and see straight away, right, my elevations were nice and high, coming round the head, following the shape of the head, hence the name round layer. And we didn't go all the way down. Why did we not do that? To control the overall look on the outline. Okay, so now we're going to come into the back. So the back in here, we're going to take a vertical section, first of all, down the back. And we're using our radial section as our guideline. So if we go, now this is a very thick, very dense area of the head. Okay, even if somebody's got quite fine hair, the density of it can be quite overpowering almost. It can be quite not much hair but quite thick, or it can be quite fine hair but quite a little bit of hair, but each strand is quite thick. So you've got to be quite careful of the way you're layering through here. So your consultations are so vital. But once you've got your idea down, it can really be quite a simple process. So never be too concerned about layering down the back. As long as you're going to be keeping a lot of length in your top layer, you don't ever want to come too short with your layering, because it will give you the opposite effect of what the layering is supposed to do, where you're meant to have a bit of volume coming through in the top just by taking some weight out of the overall look. So into the back we go. Keep your sectioning really nice and clean. And this is where you can focus quite heavily on your cutting techniques. So if you want to work with pointing, if you want to work with club cutting, you can work however you want to. So section down the back, and I'm going to show you my elevations from the side. So move her down a little bit, and we're going to go. So I'm going to take a piece over my crown area. So as we said earlier on, if we were thinking of somebody has a double crown or triple crown or something like that, we can sort of be very gentle with this area. We can pick our guideline up and just slightly point that across to keep some more length just for now. However, my mannequin doesn't, so I'm going to go straight in and club cut. So again, if we want to double check where we're going, we're pretty good, and we can move on. And then we can move down the head, start subdividing as we go, and move on. So I'm quite fussy with my cutting. Anyone who's worked with me in academy knows I'm quite fussy with cutting, I'm quite fussy with sectioning, and I don't like going out of my comfort zone. So I find once you get the fundamental cutting techniques absolutely nailed, you can find those techniques and slightly tweak them like we're going to do in the front today to match any person's haircut that you could possibly want to match. I love using club cutting. I don't really personally like doing things that are too soft. So that's just my idea of what I enjoy. But with hair cutting, it can be a very, very funny thing where you could do something that you think looks beautiful and somebody might not like it, but as long as you can appreciate the technique that's gone into the look, then you'll be absolutely fine with cutting hair. So we're going to take our next section. We're going to start pivoting from our crown area. So section number 1 was in here. Section number 2 is going to flow down into the side. So I'm going to run that on my head sheet, and we're going to pivot our sections round as we come around the head. And we're not going to be over directing. We're not going to be over directing. I want everything to come round and sit basically off the guest's head. So on a head sheet, we mark that with a little dot. And that is showing us that as we come around the head, we want the hair to pop out on its natural fall from the head. Okay. Other people do these sections vertically. I find working these diagonally or curved sections work a little bit easier. I see that you're curving your finger at the shape of the client's finger. Yeah. I think I'm probably supposed to keep them straight. If I'm honest, the question, if you can see it in the group on that department, seeing my fingers slightly were curved as I'm cutting. To be honest, I don't think that's an intended thing. If I'm honest, I just got long bandy fingers, and I find it quite difficult keeping them dead straight. But if you can keep your fingers straight when you're cutting, perfect, be my guest. I have to take smaller sections because my fingers do curve around the head a little bit. It's not something that I'm trying to do. But hey ho, let's keep going. So section number 2, I'm going to use section number 1 as my guideline and also my radial section. All right, so if I've spun her around now, so she's facing straight back, but if I spin her around, you'll see my over direction. There's no over direction at all. And I'm coming straight out from the base of the head again. And I'm going to cut that away and then subdivide my section. And then again, as we come down the shape, just utilize my cleanliness of my sections. Has anybody found when you're working, when you first started, when your sections were probably quite untidy and quite messy, that you found cutting hair quite difficult? And then when you really started cleaning your sections up, you find it a lot easier and a lot less stressful. Has anybody found that in the chat or privately or in the group? Anyone found that? Still messy. I've seen your work, Rohan. It doesn't look that messy to me. So you're probably contradicting what I say, but your work seems pretty good. But I find when I was training, I found it very, very difficult cutting hair. And it was primarily because I couldn't get my sectioning neat and my sections weren't tidy. And I'm quite OCD when it comes to hair cutting. I like to have my sections in order, all of my work in order. It's easy to section on real people. Yeah, absolutely. It's so key to get your stuff neat and stuff tidy because you, one, feel good. You make sure you're looking like you know what you're doing. And I think one of the most important things that I found when I was qualified, I got quite busy quite quickly in the salon. And I didn't know why. I wasn't the best hair cutter when I first qualified. Not by any stretch of the imagination. I was quite poor actually, and it's not until I made some mistakes that I really realised just how to work things. So never fear of making mistakes, but I would always look like I was not knowing what I was doing because my sections were really untidy. And I promise you, when you clean up your work and really give that extra couple of minutes within your haircut to just tidy up your sectioning and make sure that your work is looking neat and looking tidy, everybody in your salon will also realize that and notice that. You want your guests to see what you're doing, but you also want everybody around you to see what you're doing. We are all working to make money at the end of the day. And if you look like you know what you're doing, and then at the end of the haircut, everybody sees what you're doing when they've got hair in their face and they're covered over with hair. And they see at the end when you've created something so beautiful, you're going to find that you get that client from your manager or your colleague or anything like that. So really do focus on your sectioning. So we're going to pop in. There is something else in the chat, but I'm going to put my section in. So each time I'm subdividing, okay, and I'm pushing the hair that I don't need just out of the way to keep control. Your sections are quite wide. I haven't seen it done like that. Yeah, my sections are quite wide. You haven't got to have them too wide. I don't know. Because we're pivoting, I find that you can keep your sections a little bit wider. But if you do work with smaller, finer sections, it's not wrong. It's not wrong at all. I probably am going a little bit thicker because I do feel confident with the way I work. But if your sections are a little bit finer, then don't worry too much at all. It's just going to take you longer getting around the shape. But what you've got to, here we go. What you've really got to be focused on is just, I've lost what I was saying. So I do drop my combs a lot as well. So you have to bear with me. You've got to be aware of your over direction. So if you're pulling hair or pulling hair away or pushing it into yourself, you've got to make sure that your over direction is coming off the base. So you can take thicker sections if you can control your work. Okay. There's something else. I'm going to mute a few people. There we go. And when you cut section 3, do you take section 1 and 2 in the guide, or just section 2? Just section 2. Good. I know you knew that anyway. You knew that from the question, the way you've worded it. Just section number 2. So we're still subdividing. So section 1 and then section 2. Get rid of section 1 when you bring in section 3. Get rid of section 2 when you bring in section 4. Okay. So you're working around the head, and that way you're going to make sure you don't pick up any unwanted hair or any hair that's going to hamper the way you're working. Okay. So now we're going to come in and we're going to hit the front of our radial section. So we're now going to pick up the radial, and we've got section number 4, I think this is, or 5, one of the two. And you can see my over direction again. Let that go. You can see my over direction again is coming straight off the base of the guest. And then we're going to subdivide and work our shape down. Now this is quite a big section, but I'm going to pull everything into the overall shape in here, and then we can pick up our guide. So now what's really important for me to do, I've completed that right hand side at the back, the first quadrant. What do I need to do now to ensure that I'm going in the right direction? Can anyone tell me?
Cross check.
Cross check, absolutely. And how do I cross check? What do I do?
You over direct the hair towards the center.
Ooh.
Right?
No.
Oh, the other side. Sorry, the other side.
Other side. So over to here, you mean?
Yes.
No.
Oh God.
No, I know what you're thinking though. I know that you're thinking. I know why you're thinking. Pull it over to there. And
yeah,
technically speaking, you could be correct if you're checking certain shapes, but we're checking a very classic fundamental look. So I wouldn't want to pull it over to here. Pull it towards you horizontally. Oh, again, so much. You cross horizontal. Yes, you do. Very good. With the same elevation you cut. Excellent. So cross-checking can be very, very confusing. And as we see down in the chat and people coming on, I love this interactivity, by the way, everybody. Keep this up. This is really good. But if I were to pull it out straight towards me, so I took my sections horizontally, which is, yes, correct, because we've worked vertically the whole way around the head. Okay, so cross-checking rule number 1, you go against your shape. So if I was working diagonal sections, I would cross-check identically the other way. Okay, but say for instance I pulled my section straight out towards me, my hair's going to change. I haven't cut it there, so I've got to cut it where, or cross-check it where I cut the hair. Okay, such an important rule of cross-checking. So I have pulled this top piece, I cut this vertically but up here, so I'm going to cross-check it horizontally and up here, and hopefully I'm looking for a nice clean rounded slightly line. Hopefully we get that, otherwise I'm going to cut this bit out of the video. So we're going to look, nice clean tension, and perfect. We get that really clean line. But say for instance, we get lazy now. Okay, I'm going to pull her close. Say for instance, I get a bit lazy. I'm just going to cross check down low. And I pull this in and pull it down low. We can see the difference in the cleanliness of that line. So if I show you the cleanliness of the line up the top to start. So here's my cross check, and there is my line in there. Okay, so we can see how clean that is. And then if we get lazy with it and just lower ourselves down slightly, we can see how much more bitty that line is in there. So we've got little bit in there, a little bit down, and then it's a big point and then comes down into the base. Okay, it's so important that we elevate our section to where we cut the hair. So if we're graduating and we're pivoting round, we're going to pivot the other way, but pull it to where you cut the hair to. I cannot explain how important that is. Okay, and then you're going to not cut anything off. And you're actually, cross-checking is not just something that I do or colleagues of mine do when we're checking your work. It's also a nice way for you guys to check yourself. So if you're getting a bit confused and you think, oh, I don't know what I'm doing, stop, cross-check properly, see how you are actually probably doing it correctly, and then you build your confidence and you move on. Show us. Show you what? Show you my cross-check. Do you mean Laura? Just did. I'll show you it again in a minute if that's what you mean. If it's not, then write it in the chat. Yeah. I'll show you it in a second when I've done the second side. So I just showed you the first side. Maybe you missed it. But I'll show you again.
Is that when you pulled it up?
Yes. Yeah. So when we put it up, I check that piece. I will later on, when we've done the second side, I'm going to show you the cross-checking for down low as well. But yes, that is when I lifted the hair up because I was going opposite to my shape. Okay, so we were working first of all vertically and then horizontally. We were lifting everything up to that same point. Okay, but I'll do it again a few times before we finish. All right, so, let's move on.
Sorry.
That's all right, don't worry. That's fine. So now we're going to take section number 1 again, okay? And we're going to start moving around the other side. So same technique, same process. I've not done anything on my head sheet, so we'll do that in a bit. So I'm going to pivot again from my top point and clean up all of my sectioning again. So you can use a clip if you want to use a clip. If you don't want to use a clip, just keep the hair nice and wet. And you can see how the orangey segmenty or pizza segmenty thing starts to come into play. Okay, so now, how am I going to do this so you can see? So I'm going to stand in the same side. You can stand that side if you want. It's not wrong if you go stand in the front of the person and do it like this. If you find that easier, then go for it. I'm all about comfort. I break rules personally. There's rules that say you should learn the rules, then break them. I disagree. Find a rule and break it. If you feel more comfortable with it, then do so.
Yes, Michael.
We got told that you have to stand to the side that you're cutting. Like,
okay. Yeah.
So
that's not wrong. People cut hair differently all the time. People find that if you're cutting this side, you should stand this side, like you're saying.
yeah.
For me, I find
It's whatever's comfortable.
It is. Yeah. Where we were taught to layer hair, so you'd have to layer hair like this and then layer hair like this. And it's too difficult on the sides. It's too uncomfortable. So
yeah,
I find as long as your body position's in the right place, as long as you're moving around the head, you can stand wherever you want to stand. But primarily focus on just your over direction. So if you're over there and you're finding that you're pulling hair towards you too much, then try and come and stand around here. Come and stand here and realize that actually this is a little bit more comfortable for me. I can find that my elevation is a little bit cleaner and my body's not hurting. I find that's the better way to go rather than sticking to one side, because you may be feeling like after 10 years, you stand on the other side and think, well, why didn't I do this first of all? So some people will say stand on one side. They're not wrong. That's how they cut it. That's how they've been taught. That's how they feel comfortable. It's all a comfort thing for hair cutting. Okay. So again, we've subdivided and we're going to start to run the shape. So I can pick up my guide and start to run that in. And then I'm going to subdivide again and I'm going to run my line down into the base. Now you'll see here I'm coming out directly 90 degrees from the head. Okay. Why am I coming out 90 degrees from the head round the back when I didn't come out 90 degrees from the head on the sides? Can anybody tell me? So why am I coming out lower here and here I was coming out higher? Anybody remember?
Is it to do with elevation? Oh.
Yes.
Baseline.
Yes, perfect.
So there's no like hoop when it joins to the ear?
Perfect. Excellent. Everyone's correct. So your elevation, you're creating a little bit more of a lighter feel, so you keep that weight. And we want to keep the weight in the baseline so we don't get that whole other hoop in the ear. Perfect. So down here, we've got double the thickness, haven't we? If we're still remembering, from the back of the ears forwards, we lose all of that thickness. So down here, I can still layer this down and get quite down and dirty with this layering. I can make sure that my layers are nice and textured and nice and soft. But when we come into the front is when we've got to think of our suitability. We've got to think of what the hair's doing. Generally, people's hair gets finer in the front. Look at my hair, it's ridiculous. My hair's quite thick, then it gets quite fine in the front. So if somebody cuts this really short, I look all face. I need to have a bit of something in there and a bit of stability in there to give you more control. So again, I'm going to get rid of section number 1, pop that over there. I don't incorporate that in with my clip. I just leave that and rest it over the top because that's my second cross-checking section. Okay, so then again, I was here, now I'm going to step here. I'm moving round the head as I go. My fingers don't move, but my body moves, which shows me that roundness of the head. Okay, so if you're standing round on this side and you're cutting, no, sorry, you'll be this side, but you're moving your over directions all over the place. It's difficult. But if you're working a round shape, all we've got to do is move your body, because I'm not moving my hands and I'm coming round the head, okay? I'm coming round the head every single time I move. So your body position stays the same. If you find something that's comfortable, just do it. But make sure your fingers and your body position is in the same place and you will never, ever go wrong. I promise you. You'll never over-direct this haircut if you're moving your body around. So again, pick up your guide and run. We're going to subdivide. And again, we're in the back sections here at the moment, so I've not got to worry about my density. And I'm going to lift high, find my guide.
Rob, can I just ask a quick question?
Absolutely.
How will we get the recording of this? Because I'm going to have to go soon.
Okay, so we are, I will convert the video and then I'll send it to a colleague of mine called Elle, and she will upload it onto the Google Drive, and then we'll get the links and we'll put the links in the groups. So what academy are you at?
Boreham Wood.
Okay, so your Boreham Wood tutors will get the link and they'll send it into your groups, and then you can just access it there.
Right, okay, thank you.
Perfect. And then we're going to come down to our last section. So I'm going to get rid of that piece here. And I'm going to move into my radial section. And I'm just going to shift my body, okay? So I've moved her now, which is just defeated object. But I'm just going to shift my body round and then take my next piece. And I'm going to ensure that my body is nice and flush in with the shape. So again, we run our section. That's a bit big, so I am going to slim that down a little bit. I've got a big square in there now, but do as I say, not as I do. And then my last little piece into here, because I'm coming up and around the ear, I'm just going to leave my elevation a little bit higher, okay? And now we're going to cross-check. So I'm going to cross-check the whole way just to show you what I mean by your full-on cross-check. So I'm going to take my piece from in here, clean that up. I've cross-checked this side. I know that side's sitting nicely, okay? So I've worked vertically, so I'm going to cross-check horizontally, okay? So we're going to come across the shape. And this top piece here, I lifted high. So I'm going to lift up and hopefully it's clean. Excellent. Okay, so we now have cross-checked that bit. We're now going to come down into the mid-lengths or the middle of the head. Another nice clean section. And I'm going to pull this directly out from the head. So I shift her around. My top piece was there. My second piece is going to come out to here. Okay, and I'm expecting, well, it should be clean. And yeah, perfect. We're nice and clean. And then if you've done the top two, you should be okay for the bottom one. Chances are you're going to be nice and clean. But just for purposes of the video and showing our cross-checking, I am going to do the last one as well. So my last one came out at 90 degrees. So again, I'm going to run that down at 90 degrees and we're going to clean the line. Perfect. Okay, so that has created the whole back of our technique. And we know full well that with the choice of layering after our consultation and after the choice of consultation, the length decision in the choice of consultation, I know full well that my guest is going to be happy. Okay, so say for instance, somebody has come in and a week later and said that I'd done their hair a little bit too heavy. You can run that slat technique in and create that really nice softer layer. So can you see there what we were talking about earlier? So you can see how we've got, everyone's seen layers. I don't want to sound like I'm belittling you guys, but you've got your line, which is your longest point, okay? And everything internally is getting shorter, which is what's giving you that flick and the little bounce and the little bits of shorter hair coming all the way down. So back to what we were talking about earlier on, where we're talking about the external line is your longest point and everything internally becomes shorter. That's where we're layering. For graduation perspectives, I will try and show you what I mean. But this line here would be right up here, and then everything will be longer, so you get that stack. Does that make sense? Hopefully that makes sense. Can you please show
Can I
again?
just quickly ask, sorry,
Yep.
how do you know where to put your first sort of layer? What, do you know, your shortest layer that you've cut there, how do you know that that's going to be a good place to have that, if that makes sense?
Good question. Very, very good question. It's a difficult one to really answer as well, if I'm honest. It's all in consultation. So you're going to think of your guest's face shape. You're going to ask her what she likes, what she doesn't like. You're going to find what your guest's head looks like. So if we're using my face as an example, we've all been through face shapes. We all know I've got a narrow face. It's quite long. So if I had really short layers and they started flicking here, and then the length was really, really long, I'd look all narrow still in my face. Yeah. So you can think of your face shape first of all and think we maybe want to get a bit more volume in the sides. So we'll leave our layers a tad longer to create that little bit of lift. Or you ask your guest, how short do you want your layers to be? How much do you want to see layering in your hair? So then they'll say to you, oh, I'd like it somewhere here. Always leave it a little bit longer because they will have to see the hair and blow dry the hair themselves. But it's all done in your consultation. You'll see in your face shape what you want to see, and you'll see how much you want to soften the face in, or how much length you need to see to sort of widen a face shape or something like that. Does that answer your question?
It does, thank you.
Perfect. Megan's got her hand up. Hopefully you've done that on purpose. Do you have a question? Or maybe you just muted yourself and pushed the hand up button. If you do, sorry.
So would you ask the client how high they want their layer, like the highest layer?
Yeah, yes and no. It's going to contradict what I just said, but yes, I would say how much layering would you like to see in your hair? But this is where you come in as professionals, because you don't ask a dentist, you don't say to a dentist, I'd like a root canal, please, when you only need a checkup.
Catalina, no.
All right. You don't ask your dentist or tell your dentist what you're going to do. They ask you what is the problem, and then they tell you how they're going to fix it. So I always advise it, because I'm the specialist. I've been working my whole life to train, and so have you guys. You'll be working so hard to train in your specialism. So give them answers of what they're looking for. Explain to them, okay, so you want your layers quite short. I personally don't think that's going to work today. Let's leave them a little bit longer. What you've got, if we use my Manik as an example, this is what I'd say to her. I'd say you've got amazing cheekbones and you've got a really strong jawline. So why don't we put a little bit of feature in the front, something like a fringy or a bangsy area in the front, and leave our layers a little bit longer through the back and the sides, just to expand that area through your cheekbones area, to enhance that area in the front a little bit more. Something like that, and they'll say, blimey, this guy knows what he's talking about. Okay, no.
Sorry. Would it? Do you feel like square layers are more like defined, and round layers are more graduated?
Not graduated, because round layers are layered. But yes, I do Absolutely. I think square layers are a little bit more, aren't they? They're bang, they're in there and you can see them, and they're a little bit more sort of defined for what someone's looking for. Your round layers, you're absolutely right. They're just going to be a little bit more zhuzhy and a little bit more give her that wow factor, I think, if that makes sense, if that answers your question. Pauline, yeah, with thin hair, give it more volume. Absolutely. So you want to be showing your professionalism and showing what you know. I don't know, everybody who has done lots and lots of training in their life, which every one of us will do, or every one of us has done, will all want to show people just what we know about our craft and how hard we've worked, because you've worked very, very hard. So show it off. Explain that you know about the bone structures. Explain that you know about the face shapes. Show your guest in salon. Make her feel amazing, but make her feel like you're going to make her more amazing. They're never going to leave you. If you explain about the bones and the face and the features and say she's got amazing lips, let's put something in between your cheekbones and the lips to just make that area pop. So you're going to think, oh, go and do it. If somebody
When can you cut my hair?
Well, it's a bit difficult at the minute, but I'm happy to go after lockdown. I don't mind. So now with the haircut, I've got a bit sidetracked really. What if the client has a round chubby face? What would you recommend? Leave length, maybe. I'd leave some length. Don't put a bob on her. Do a little bit of fringy or something like that to take the focus away from the cheeks, but primarily just leave a bit of length, to be honest. I would like to see more examples of. Okay, yeah, we can do that in a couple of weeks, and we can do, or maybe next week we could do like a bone structure theory session, all on me magic paper, and do a few fringes, do a few bandsy areas, work the front of the face. I think a lot of the time things are focused so heavily on the back and the sides that we forget that the front is the most focal point. It's the most visual area. It's the area that everybody sees. So let's do a session on just the front one day, and we'll see how we can actually do certain things and make people look like they suit their hair better. I was going to say something different there, and I've probably got in a bit of trouble. Rob has his work cut out. Well, let's see. So I'll move on now. I'm getting sidetracked. Our radial's here. We're moving forwards, and everything's now done vertically. This is how I work it. You can still pivot if you want to pivot. I find pivoting is a bit tough. Okay, and this is very, very nice. Okay, so we're going to just mute somebody. Oh, I've just asked somebody else to unmute themselves. Sorry. So I now stand in the back, and I'm going to lower her down, and I'm just going to work exactly the same all the way forwards. So again, section from the radial and section from the front. Make sure you can see your guide and run that line. If you want to stand in the front because you're more comfortable, stand in the front. It's not a problem. But now we're going to start to focus differently on our elevation. So my elevation comes down, and I'm going to just finish my elevation a tiny bit lower than this. Okay. And what you'll notice is, or hopefully you've noticed, is that her head's been up the whole way round. Why is it important that her head is up the whole way round? Can anybody have an idea as to why?
It affects the length.
Yeah, exactly. Absolutely. It affects the length, it affects your volume, it affects your elevation, it affects absolutely everything. So well done, Ryan, really good. It affects everything that you're doing. So if she's got her head down and you're doing one side, then she lifts her head the other side, the lengths are going to be different. Okay, quite simply. Would you call this a round layer cut? Yes, absolutely. Yes, Isabel creates an even shape throughout the head and keeps the length. Yeah, absolutely. So this is a round layer, yeah. They call it a uniform layer in the LHAA criteria, but it is a round layer because it is rounding your layers, basically. Okay, and then we're going to run this down again into the front and keep my elevation just that tad higher, just because we, as I said earlier, we want to control that little front area. We don't want to go too short or too low. to affect our overall outline. Okay, and then my last little piece in the front on the left, we're going to lift and again keep that really good tension the whole way through. That's so, so important. And just run my line into the underneath. Oy. That was tough. So I was leaning a bit too much there. I probably should have come around a different way and started to change my body position, but I got a bit lazy there, so don't get lazy. Okay, and again, in this side, I'm going to take my radial into the, or just the front of my radial section and the radial. So,
Rob, can we please sit on the side as well, like while you're working, just to see another angle?
absolutely.
Thank you.
So this side, you mean? I think that's what you mean.
Yeah.
Yeah, perfect. So to show over direction, that's quite a good idea actually. So I'm going to take my piece again in the front. So I've got my radial now and my section in front, and you'll see I'm pulling my radial forward slightly because this is the section that I'm cutting. Okay, this is my guide, so I'm pulling it slightly forwards because I want the hair to be directly off the base of the person's head. Pick up my guide and take that away. Subdivide that, and we're going to come with this last little bottom piece here. You can get this done in 2 sections if you feel quite confident, because you've got that area of that we don't want to come too low. And then elevate high again, and we're going to keep our elevation in there. And then my last little piece here, I'm going to subdivide that to be, for the purposes of the video, not saying I normally just go straight at it and hack it, but we're going to lift this last little bit up and pick up the guide and run through. And then the last little piece in the base, just run that slightly higher elevation. So I have missed a little bit up here, so I'm just going to pick that up and do that. Lost my 2 pieces. So to cross check, we're going to cross check again. When you got the last section in the front, it doesn't change the forward line. No, because we're going to do something in the front anyway, so that doesn't matter too much. Okay. I've got some forward graduation in here from before, which is why I've got my shorter pieces, but I'm going to show you some forward graduation as well, so it doesn't really matter too much. If you want to keep your shape really nice and solid into the front piece, then still do the same technique, because all of this hair isn't really going to hit down there because she's still going to have layers in there. You're always going to have that little bit of sort of front to back feel on the look. Okay, hope that answers your question. So again, I'm going to take my horizontal section and depending on where you're standing, horizontal or vertical really, and lift up and see if we're clean, and we're clean. Good. Okay. So that's the uniform layout. Just quickly on my head sheets, I want to just run these off so that we've got them logged. So we're coming vertically forwards, and with our over directions, we make sure that we put our dots in to ensure that we know where we moved. And hopefully you can see that. And our elevation was just round the whole way. Now on the back, we came low, didn't we? So we can run that low. And then in here, this is just going to be square. And again, into here, just run that nice and low, and then run that forwards. Okay, so that shows you your elevations. For forward graduation, I want to touch on this very briefly. I know we've been on here for a little bit of time now, but I want to touch forward graduation with you guys because it is difficult. And I think I have a way that works better than I've ever seen. Forward graduation is all about balance, okay? And it's all about facial features. It's all about thinking of your person's look and making it look better, okay? So you'll have so many ideas of how you can work it and what you can basically do. You can do it freehand if you want to do it freehand, or you can pull it right from that side to this side and this side to that side. It's all very confusing. Doesn't need to be. And I'm going to show you a nice way today that I like. If you don't like it, don't use it. If you don't feel comfortable with it, don't use it. But I just feel like it's a very clean way of working, okay? So we're going to put her parting back in. I go from a central parting in most of my demos because I find it a little bit easier to control my work. And I'm going to take a very fine section around the front of my guest's hairline, okay? Slightly curved section to flow the hairline. I'm going to make that a bit smaller. Doesn't need to be too thick at all. And I'm going to control the way this front piece works. So I'm going to pin that away, come into this side and do this side, and then I'll show you. Now she's got a bit of a cow's lick going on here. I've never known a mannequin to have a cow's lick. She's got a few of them. So we've got to be careful. And tuck it behind the ear if she's got ears, which most mannequins don't. So you'll see that we, oops, we're in trouble. You'll see that we have our angled line from the front, okay? And now we want to push our head slightly back and we're going to work some forward graduation. So this is where we're going to start to think of her facial features, okay? So we'll do a bangsy length because I think everyone loves a bit of a bangs and it's always difficult to utilize. So we want to look at her chin, we want to look at her jaw, we want to look at the corners of the lips, the point of the nose and the cheekbones and the eye sockets. Okay, all of this area of the face are things that we can use to our advantage. It's all symmetrical. So when you look at a person, a painter, someone who's painting a face, you've got your face here. And 9 times out of 10, I mean, you've got eyes and you've got your point of your nose, you've got your cheekbones, and then you've got your lips, and then you've got your jawline. Okay, it's a terrible photo, a terrible picture. But the painter will instantly go straight away across here to catch your cheekbones with the point of your nose and run all the way around. And then they'll run a point down the front because your left is normally symmetry to your right. Then the chances are they're going to do another line from that point through your lips and hit the point, and another point from that point through your jawline and into your chin and hit that point. Hopefully you can see what I've done there. So it looks like a little mask, which is quite poignant for the time we're in. But your point from your cheekbones hits the point of your nose. So this is all symmetrical here. You can draw a big line. That's your cheekbones and point of your nose. Then from there, lips come down and meet together. And then your chin and your jawline comes down and meets together. Okay? So why don't we do this with hair? Why don't we think of that situation and mark that down with our forward grad? So we will. What we're going to do, I'm going to move her out of that big shining light above me. And I'm going to take a section of hair in that first section that is just the width of her nose, okay? Just the nose width. And I'm going to take this up to a desired length. So again, we choose that in our consultation and we'll just lock that off nice and square. Have a bit of triangle if you want. Don't twist it. None of this twisting motion. I don't find that ever works for me. I've never really tried it too much. It scares me too much. I don't want to do it. So now I'm going to stand directly in the front of the guest, okay? And if I want something to sit on her cheekbones, I'm going to leave it slightly longer to allow for that flick and that movement, okay? So can you please zoom in? Yes. I zoom in on the wall or zoom in on this or both? Let's zoom in on both. So actually, I'm going to pull this forwards because it's too light, that is. If I go forward, that's better. So can you zoom in on the wall? Not me then. There's the wall. There's the wall, all right? My bad. So we're gonna pull this first section of the hair, the width of her nose, okay? And then we're gonna start to point at certain areas of her face to make sure I am balanced. So I'm gonna use the corner of her lips as my focal point because my length has come a bit shorter, okay? So we're gonna take our first piece in here. I'm gonna come a bit shorter with that actually. I wanna do a bit more of a free-flowing forward grad. So we've hit that hits the corner of the chin. Now we're going to use the lips. So I'm going to pull this section in front, stand directly in the front, and angle my fingers down to the floor and my knuckles up to hit the point of her lips. Okay, it's really important that your knuckles come up to hit the point of where you're looking to go and take that piece and then this area into the sides, even further, come round, pull it into the front, and knuckles come up to hit the corner of the opposite side of the lips that we're working. Okay. So opposite side of the lips, run that up. My fingertips instantly hit the floor or point down to the floor. Okay. This side, we're going to do the same, standing in the front again, but my fingertips come and hit the point of the opposite side of the lips that we're facing. I promise you, you will never have off balance for a graduation. It just never will go off balance. So again, we pull down, same elevation, hit my shortest point here that we've created, and my fingertips hit the corner of the lips, and my knuckles hit the floor, and I run my shape forwards. Really important that you almost tuck your elbow into your hips in here, because some people can find it's a little bit difficult, but you don't want to come through and start cutting all of this length off. All we're doing is just taking that piece away from that front area. So that's where we want the flick. And I guarantee you, every time your balance will always be perfect, because we're using the symmetry of the person, which makes sense, doesn't it, really? Amazing, much easier. Yeah, it is. The other techniques are fine. They're good, but they don't have the guarantee of balance. All right, and this, I promise you, balances. So now what we're going to do, I'm going to do one more section, because I think my battery's about to die on my laptop. Now what we do is only go back 3 sections, very fine sections, but only go back 3. If you go more than 3, you're going to start to come into your overall layering shape, and we don't want that. We just want that flick in the front to connect and get longer into the back, but we want it all to still be nice and long. So again, section 2, we're going to lift slightly higher. So again, we want to think of our weight. Section 1's low. Section 2, we're going to lift to here. Section 3 is going to come to here. So we're getting lighter, yeah, as we're moving back the head. So again, we're going to take our slight piece from above the nose. First section was here. Second piece was slightly higher. Okay. And we can see, now I've got a slight corner in there to cut off. So I don't want to just start club cutting now. Okay. I want to make sure that we get a little bit more of a solid feel. So we've got my guide that I'm going to follow, but as we come down, I'm just going to start twisting my body around and finding my guideline. So you haven't got to start angling your fingers anymore, because we've already done that. We've already angled ourselves in. Now we're just lifting and showing the shape. So again, we lift high, twist my elbow into my body and run that, and then lift high again and twist my elbow again in. Okay. Then when we do one more section, you're going to find that you get, how do you do with people who has a widow's peak? To be honest, you got to see how big that widow's peak is. If it were me, any widow's peaks or any fringes or any sort of forward graduation or fringes on widow's peaks, I try and dodge my way around it, and I try and explain why they shouldn't have something and what can we do that's going to make it look better. If I'm honest, I'm not a fan of widow's peaks. They are quite rare, mostly. Who would it work best on? Dracula, yes. Nice one. Yeah, so it would work very well. But what we want to do, I'm going to dress it out and just show you what happens. So when you blow dry it, it gives you a nice little flick, a nice little bit of zhuzh in the front, so it will come down and go bing into there. So I'm not going to blow dry this because I am running out of battery on my tablet, which is why we went into a bit of forward graduation as well. So just by loosening all of the hair up, dress that forwards, and we get a nice sort of little bangsy section in the front, something to just run the rest of that shape and run the rest of the look round to. The rest of the layers in here, just give her a shake. Still what girls like to do, they like to flip their hair back, don't they? Wow. Let's do that. And we get that really nice textured wave, textured movement with a nice little bit of layer into it. And just something that's controlled. Okay, and the most important area for me is not the front, it's not the back, it's in the side. So where we keep that weight still on our overall outline, we still can see that really clean line running down on the base, because we've allowed ourselves a little bit more of a tweak for our look. We haven't elevated so low. We've kept the weight quite high in the sides, so we've made sure that we keep that little bit of softness and that little bit of stability in the underneath base. Please don't pick up the customers and shake them, guys. Yeah. You don't want to do that. No, you won't get a tip. That was a good one. So yeah, I hope you will enjoy it. I hope it understands it and makes sense, really. I will have the video going on online, so you can watch it back and double check through it. But for layering or graduation,
Thanks, Rob.
no worries, my pleasure. For layering, for graduation, for line work, we use elevation, we use over direction. Okay? Perfect.
Perfect. Thank you.
My pleasure. Thank you all so much for joining, and we'll see you next week.